All right, everyone. Welcome to another live interview. Today we are going to be talking with Darrell James. Darrell is the owner and founder of James Jordan Search. Is that correct? James Jordan Search?
Yep.
Yep.
It's a
And
good way of saying
also,
it.
and also the host of the Influential podcast. Is that right?
It's the Influential Recruiter podcast.
Influential Recruiter podcast. Well, thank you very much, Darrell, for being a part of this today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So before we get into the good stuff, where are you located right now, Darrell? Where are you living?
I'm actually based in the Houston, Texas area, but I'm actually in an area called Missouri City, which is right next to Sugar Land. So I'm just in the suburbs of Houston, Texas.
Awesome. How long you been out there?
I've been in Houston now going on probably 20, 21 years.
Okay, very cool. Now, I always like to ask this thing because this is my favorite question, but what's your favorite favorite football team?
Ooh, favorite football team. Man, I'm originally from Phoenix, Arizona, and growing up in Phoenix, when I grew up in Phoenix, there was not a football team. And so now they have the Arizona Cardinals. So growing up, I became a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Well, now you're at least you're closer to them. I'm a Niners fan, so we can't like the Cowboys at all, right?
No. I see you. Is that Joe Montana you got hanging up on the wall
There
back
he
there?
is. Yep, that's Joe.
That's what I thought it was.
Yep. Awesome. I'm actually just making sure that we are live in here, but I think we are. But just want to double check that before we keep going. So anyways, Darrell, with I noticed I came across your LinkedIn and I actually saw one of your posts about your experience with the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How did that work out for you? How did you get that engagement, and what were you able to do there?
Yeah, so that engagement with the Vikings is something that's been in the works for probably about 2 years. And so it took literally 2 years for me to actually get to Minnesota. But basically, the chief operating officer, his name is Kevin Warren, and Kevin Warren and I played basketball together in college at Grand Canyon University. And, we stayed in touch sparingly over the years. And, he kind of, I knew what he was doing. He kind of knew what I was doing. But he heard me talk about some things that I was doing as it related to diversity and inclusion. And as you know, I'm kind of a thought leader in the area of, recruiting and hiring diverse talent. He wanted me to come and talk about, inclusion as related to leadership and how to not only lead, how to build, but also lead a diverse workforce. And so I went up there and gave a 2-hour seminar, and man, it was a home run, had a blast. And Kevin now is leaving he's leaving the Minnesota Vikings. He's actually taken on a new role. He will be the commissioner for the Big Ten Conference, and which is a huge role for him. But it's really cool. And so hopefully you'll see me doing some Big Ten work as well. So
That's awesome. That must have been like a
and actually, let me kind of say, so I actually ended up doing a speaking gig with the Vikings. So I know we're talking about search, and some part, people are probably saying, well, what's the correlation?
right.
I'm gonna make the connection for you. Because of that conversation around a speaking gig, what came out of that was the opportunity for me to hop in to help with a search project that they had. And they had a search project that was, they were looking for a VP of HR. And so the ball had already kind of started rolling. And, working in the NFL, working in NBA, Major League Baseball, it's not hard to find people who want to come and work for you, right, just because of that brand. But I was able to leverage and be able to help them out. My candidate didn't win the job, but my candidates were in the top 3 to 5
right,
of that particular role. And so, I came close, but I didn't get it. But the point there is that what you'll find that I do is I leverage what I do from a training standpoint, really targeting the corporate talent acquisition community, and leverage that with opportunities to do search work.
Awesome. Awesome. So we kind of actually were talking about this a little bit, right before this call is really you're just bringing a bunch of value to the organization and in turn is you get the opportunity out of that.
Right. It's, in the search world, I've been in the search game now, man, probably for, oh, wow, 17, 18 years roughly.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I realized is that, in the search game, you're just, everybody's fighting for the same gigs. So
Right.
whether you are, top 4, top 5 executive search firm like a Korn or a Hydrick, or even if you're kind of a mom and pop recruiting firm, everybody's looking to do the same thing. So what I was trying to do is, how do I find things that make me different from everybody else?
I love it.
And that was the thing and so I kind of took two passions and really combined them into one business. My passion around people and recruiting, and then my passion around speaking and training. And I brought those two worlds together. That's
fantastic. And so we'll dive into the podcast in a little bit, but is that what you kind of find is like the big game changer for you is that leading with the value, leading with the free engagement as being a big differentiator? Because I know I talk with a lot of my clients and you're right in the fact that, look, every recruiter says that they're, an expert in an industry. Everybody says that they've been doing it for X amount of years. Everybody says it. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is like a lot of times just how we show up that makes us different.
Absolutely.
And could you elaborate on that a little bit?
No, showing up different, depending on who you talk to, because there are some people who would say, well, you're doing too much. And one of the reasons that, early in my search career, I worked for a pretty good sized boutique firm called the Hudson Highland Group. And they were a spinoff of Monster.com back in like 2002, 2003. And one of the things I realized is that if I go work for a bigger firm, I don't have the flexibility. It's kind of, when you work for a big firm, you kind of get in and you got to kind of fight with everybody else. And, some partners like, well, that's my client. Don't talk to my client without talking to me first. And you got to deal with all that kind of crap. I figured, hey, let me go out there on my own, let me be the unicorn in the space.
Right.
And then let me see how I can leverage that. And I'll tell you, it hasn't been easy.
Right.
But, as time has gone on, I figured that out more and more is, how do I not only be the unicorn, but more importantly, how do I let my potential clients know that I am a unicorn?
Right.
And then leverage that into, be able to do, different search opportunities as well as different training opportunities.
Right. How long, and I think this is one of the things that a lot of people struggle with no matter what space, but like, I think we're programmed to want instant gratification in today's society, and especially when you look at marketing your own business and things like that. How long do you feel it took for you to really stick with it to where you feel like you have a brand right now and kind of an influencer, place in your market?
Great question. By my own fault, it's taken me probably somewhere in the ballpark of about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But let me say this. The caveat is by my own fault.
Right.
Because the more I became comfortable with putting myself out there, the more I became comfortable with producing content, the more I became comfortable with doing things other than the traditional, let's just say the traditional cold calling that a lot of agencies do, or, even some search firms, the more I became comfortable around producing content and I mean, really just blatantly being unashamed. I don't give a damn how I sound, how I look, if I got a booger hanging down my nose, if I got crust in my eye, if my hair's messed up, I don't care. And it's taken me a while to get to that point.
Right.
At the end of the day, as you know, Donnie, it's just about producing that content.
Exactly.
He is producing it on a consistent basis. And I'm finally just now getting comfortable and being consistent with providing that content.
Yeah.
Whether it's through a podcast, whether it's through an interview, even just posting a freaking picture.
Yep.
And so I'm rambling, so forgive me. Just cut me off, Donnie.
It's perfect, because I think this is huge. And I talked with, last week when I was doing this with Renee, and this is a major kind of pain point, so to speak, for recruiters is there's a lot of knowledge that they know they have inside. And you hit the nail on the head. It's getting yourself comfortable to be able to put yourself out there. And, you know, literally I was talking to a prospective client yesterday, and that was kind of how I really just don't know what I'm going to write about. I don't know. It's like, I like the idea of it, but you know, there's always some sort of a hang up. So, and I know that for me personally, even on my own journey, right, there was a point in time where, when you start creating content, all you're worried about is like, what are people going to say and what are people going to think?
Oh yeah.
You know,
and trust me, I got people out there who criticize me, tease me. My buddies tease me.
Oh yeah.
You know, whenever I kick off my podcast, you know, hello, Darrell James, and they're ragging the hell out of me about that. But I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
And,
well, it's driving revenue for you. So
that's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. Let me throw something out there for you real quick. A book that I think all business people should read. I think everybody should read this book. It's a book by Tim Grover. It's called Relentless.
Oh, dude, I love that book. It's great.
Dude, that's one of my favorite books. I actually prefer the audio version. The audio version. But one of the things that Tim Grover talked about is get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yep.
And so many of us, when we get uncomfortable, we don't function. And the idea is that the more that we can function and produce in our uncomfortable state, the easier it becomes. So get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yep. And that is an absolutely phenomenal book. For those of you who've never read it, it's Tim Grover trained Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and he actually talks a lot about the differences of in his opinion why Kobe and Michael are better than LeBron James, simply from the standpoint of how they show up and do their work. You know, and it's really insightful.
Oh, so and when he wrote that book, that I think that's when, you know, LeBron was with Miami,
right?
And so he kind of addressed that. But LeBron has finally adopted that, or just he's grown into himself. He still has shortcomings like we all do, but he's become a better player. And so over the years, LeBron has become more relentless in his pursuit of, you know, chasing championships and so forth. Yeah.
That's funny you bring that book up. I mentor a player on the University of Nevada. That's where I went to school and played, and I stay connected with guys in the program, and that was one of the number one books I had him listen to this offseason.
Oh, good. Man, every athlete needs to listen to that book or read that book. No question, hands down.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your podcast, Darrell. I mean, what was the motivation to get that started, other than, you know, putting yourself out there like we've talked about? But what type of content are you putting out on the podcast? I know it's you know, a lot about diversity and things like that, but tell us about that.
Gotcha. So the podcast, so for the last 15 years, I've gotten into training around this concept of diversity recruiting. And so if you look at my background, the first 10, 15 years of my corporate career was in corporate HR, corporate recruiting. And so I've always had the mindset that actually being in the shoes, getting the phone calls from different agencies, I've always been in the mindset, I'm not looking to sell a hiring manager or cold call a hiring manager. I want to go through HR, because if I can go and build a relationship with HR, I get more breadth in the types of opportunities I can do, or I search projects. So created this concept of inclusion recruiting. In 2014, I wrote a book. Prior to that, I did some trainings with companies such as Dell, AT&T. And what I realized is that oftentimes corporations have been talking about this thing around diversity now for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. But it's amazing to me how nobody's quite figured it out yet. And so what I called it inclusion recruiting, because so many people had a negative reaction when you said diversity. And diversity, you know, every time, you know, you talked about diversity, even recruiters would think that meant that was a form of forced hiring. That was a form of hiring a candidate who was not as qualified as a non-diverse candidate.
Right.
And so really, it just kind of pissed me off, and I got agitated about the process and what the perception was. So wrote the book, Inclusion Recruiting, created the training. But what I realized is that if I looked at the corporate recruiting community, not everybody is ready to accept this concept of inclusion or diversity recruiting.
Right.
But but given, if you kind of get an idea of the types of books I listen to and listen to a lot of personal development, I thought about, well, wait a minute. I could talk about diversity recruiting all day long, but if that recruiter doesn't have core competencies and skills and behaviors, what I talk about as it relates to diversity doesn't even mean anything, because if they don't have the ability, if they don't have strong business acumen, if they don't know how to engage with hiring managers, if they don't have that presence about themselves, that they're confident in who they are and what they do, what I'm saying about diversity doesn't mean anything.
Right.
So I created the concept of influential recruiter. Influential recruiter is more overarching to all of talent acquisition and HR. Inclusion recruiting is just a subset of the influential recruiter.
Got it.
And so that's where the influential recruiter. So when I created that podcast, the online course, all of that is really geared towards the corporate recruiting community, which is oftentimes quite different than your target community, because your target community is the agencies, and some agency recruiters become corporate recruiters,
right.
Which, by the way, agency recruiters are the best corporate recruiters over the years that I've learned that. But those are really two different worlds, two different motivations and
right.
so forth. So that's where the Influential Recruiter podcast came from. And the content that I create is not just diversity recruiting, but one of the things I talked about was the 5 behaviors that all corporate recruiters need to have.
Right.
And one of the things I talked about, is you need to be working out. 2, you need to be playing golf. You need to meditate. And so I talked about things like that. And I'm a big golfer.
Yep.
I love the game of golf. And so, but I believe that golf is one of the greatest things you can do to build relationships.
Absolutely.
And so I believe not only men, but women also. It's not about playing the game great. It's about just being willing to get out there, have a good time, have fun. And you got at a minimum 4 hours to build a relationship and have a conversation. And there's a belief out there that, you cut deals on the golf course. Hell no. The last thing I ever talk about on the golf course is business, unless my client brings it up. But what I'm doing is I'm building a relationship and rapport to talk about business at a later date, ideally at the 19th hole.
There you go. I love that. What's your golf handicap, if you don't mind sharing?
Man, right now I'm playing to an ugly 15. I've had it down to about an 8, and so I'm trying to get it back. I got young kids, so I'm trying to get it back down. So I got a little practice to do.
Awesome. So how have you been able to? I know, a lot of the clients I work with, and a lot of people on the agency side, they try to avoid HR kind of at all costs.
Yep.
And there's obviously a bunch of different ways we can slice these things up, but how have you been able to kind of leverage that podcast in order to get more engagement with HR and searches?
Yeah, but producing content.
Yep.
And and when I'm producing content, I'm getting connections in different ways than if it was just me trying to sell a search project.
Yep.
Or try to close a search project. So if I'm providing value where I'm not asking for anything, that makes a huge difference. Have you heard of, oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the book. It's one of my favorite books, The Art of Persuasion by Steve Cialdini.
Yep.
And so one of the things he talks about, you build influence. One of the keys to building influence is your ability to provide value without asking for anything in return.
Right.
And so the more, and I've always been a firm believer, you give without the expectation of anything to come back to you. But once you get in the mindset of giving and producing and promoting, it's going to come back to you at some point.
Yeah. And I think that's, that was kind of when I was asking you how long until you were able to kind of build a brand, and obviously you said that there were some things for yourself that you probably could have sped that process up.
Oh man, you
get out of your own way.
You can literally, dude, you can go from within a month to and being an influencer
Mhm.
if you're willing to put in the time. So it doesn't take long. The only thing that holds people back is themselves.
Absolutely.
And I was the number one victim of that. I held myself back.
Yep. And I'll second that. I mean, I've definitely held myself back doing too, but I think a key point that you make is when you create content and there's not a call to action at the end, that's where you build the relationship, right? Where I'm just coming in here and just saying, hey, look, I'm going to come and I'm going to create a ton of goodwill for my marketplace. I'm going to add a bunch of value. But when you can really create this, and this is what I try to, tell my clients is when you can create from that place, then everything becomes a hell of a lot easier. It actually takes the pressure off of like, is somebody going to like this or not? Hey, look, if I'm putting my best self out there and I'm trying to create value and you don't like it, I don't care. Right.
Exactly.
Because I know what my intentions are. I know what I'm trying, what I'm trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the flip side of that is you also have to sprinkle in a little bit of an ask, right?
Absolutely.
Because at some point in time, you got to be able to say, hey, look, well, by the way, here's what I do. Right.
So Donnie, you're going to love this one. Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
Jab, 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 right hook.
Mm-hmm.
That was the basis. That was a book.
Yep.
And that's what he said. For every 3 jabs, the right hook is the ask.
Yep.
But you got to be willing to have those 3 jabs, and then you throw that right hook.
Exactly. And it's funny you bring up Gary. We talked about Gary Vaynerchuk last week on this. We'll call it a show now, but Gary V always comes up, and Gary V is how I got my start in different industry. He had Wine Library TV. That's where Gary got his start. And I started Flooring My Life TV. And this was back in 2005, 2006, when all of these things were new. Right. And that's where I got my start was just, going out and trying to do the Gary V way. So it's amazing how much influence he's had on people. And I love you bring up that jab, jab, right hook. That's another great book. Because, it's got to be value ask,
Yeah.
If we're just looking at the recruiting industry as a whole, Darrell, what do you think, what do you think there are some areas of opportunity from the agency side for recruiters to kind of, what can we do better, I guess is the question.
Ooh, what could we do better? I think one of the challenges that a lot of agency recruiters have, and I find this to be interesting, when you look at the large-scale global executive search firms, so once again, a Korn, a Heidrick, and so forth, every single one of those firms they have a diversity practice. And what they do is they say that, hey, we do everything we can to make sure that all of our search projects have a diverse slate of candidates, whether based on ethnicity or gender. So they got the message. They got the memo years ago. Agency recruiters haven't gotten that message, or they haven't gotten that memo. And I think that one of the things that I bring to the table, that's one of my competitive advantages, is that I bring that concept to the table. And I think it makes a big difference. The challenge is a lot of people, for a multitude of reasons, are uncomfortable with that, and they have negative perceptions about that. So they won't ever bring that up. But the challenge that, some agencies may have is get comfortable with it, understand why that's important to the workforce, and get rid of the crap out of your head about the negative perceptions of diversity recruiting versus what's the value add and how do you do it the right way. Right.
I love it. What do you, with your business right now, what are some of the things that you're most excited about?
Most excited about, man, leveraging the technology. Look at what we're doing right now.
Yep.
With Zoom, and so you're doing a Zoom Facebook Live video, man. This is, to get a basic account on Zoom is like what? So actually, Zoom is free,
right?
If you keep your videos under 45 minutes or 40 minutes, then it's $15 a month. If you want to go above 40 minutes, and then is, to do the webinar piece, then you're looking at like $45.
Right.
So when you look at the potential value that you can add, and you take a tool like this, the cost is nominal, and your scalability is, drastically changes when you're able to leverage tools like Zoom and leverage social media, leverage LinkedIn. I'm excited about, I got some online courses that I'm releasing. I'm excited about how I'm going to pivot that opportunity with the Vikings and be able to do some other work in the leadership space, and even really targeting the sports industry, both from a professional standpoint, as well as to even the potential of doing some college work as well.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. A lot of people, I think, would love to be able to do kind of what you're doing, right? Put yourself out there, build, doesn't have to be a podcast, but create content. If you can give them one piece of advice, what would that be?
Get yourself out the way. I mean, it's as simple as that sounds. I think that really becomes the challenge, and we hold ourselves back. And I only speak about this as passionate as I do is because that's been my own experience.
Right.
And so nothing held me back other than me. I can't blame the economy. There's nothing else I could blame other than myself. So the more that we can get out of our own way, over the years, I've always been told that, you need to have a niche, need to have a niche. And I agree with that to a certain degree. But one of the things that becomes very important is I'm priding myself on becoming a marketing and sales professional that does recruiting.
Yep.
Versus me being a recruiter, I'm a marketing and sales, not professional, expert.
Right.
That does recruiting. And I think whether you are an agency-based recruiter or whether you are a corporate recruiter, the quicker we make that shift in our mindset can have a huge difference on our ability to be successful.
I think that's the biggest slam dunk right there, Darrell, is I think Gary Vee puts it as a you need to turn yourself into a media. You're not you're a media company now.
Absolutely. Exactly. You're at the nail on the head. You're a media company that does recruiting.
Exactly.
Not a recruiting company that's recruiting. And, that was one of the things that I learned from just listening to Gary Vee, and it made so much sense. And what's the beauty is, I was talking to a large search firm. They were, exploring the opportunity to bring me on board, and having those conversations. What I realized is that I have the competitive advantage. And I remember talking to one of the partners, and I said, so tell me, what's your LinkedIn strategy for this next year? And his response was, I don't have one. What do you mean by it? What, can you elaborate, Darrell? And that's when I said, I got something that some of these other large firms. So based on my ability to leverage, not just LinkedIn, but social media in general, I have a competitive advantage over the big boys.
Right.
Big boys and girls, I should say.
Yep.
And so am I always going to be able to compete with them? No. But the more I can penetrate the market, the more impressions that I can make about my brand and my services, other than, some people just know who they are. But if I'm constantly driving that message home, I'm in the ballgame.
I love it. So I've kind of asked the things I want to ask. Is there anything else you kind of want to leave us with today, Darrell? Is there anything I should have asked that I didn't?
Man, the only thing I'm going to ask, man, is that slam dunk I just had, was that an alley-oop? Was that a one-hander? Was it a reverse? So I played college hoops, so you were a football player, so I played hoops. I leveraged everything in my mind from a hoop experience.
Yeah, man, that was a reverse dunk for sure.
There you go. Okay, there we go. That's a good dunk. That's a good dunk.
Now, you played college ball at Grand Canyon, right?
Yes.
In Arizona.
Yep.
So I had no idea. How long have they been a Division I program?
So great question. So when I was there, Grand Canyon was in the NAI.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so small school. We still played some D1 schools, some D2 schools. And so they became D1. This all happened probably in the last 15 years, I believe.
Okay.
as they, they were very smart. They, Grand Canyon was a small Southern Baptist university. They kind of held on to the whole Christianity thing, but when they started doing the online courses, the masters, the bachelors, they just blew up.
Right.
And the big difference that they had over something like a University of Phoenix is that they were actual brick and mortar campus with athletics. And that was something very unique that they just leveraged. And, so when I was at Grand Canyon, you probably had 1,800 students.
Wow.
And now they're probably hovering around 15 to 18,000.
Yeah.
And that's just within a 30-year period of time. But that's unheard of for a lot of, college campuses out there.
Right. Well, I was watching, my alma mater was played against Grand Canyon last year at Grand Canyon. In Nevada, I don't know how much you followed, but Nevada was a top 10 team last year.
So are you saying Nevada or UNLV?
Nevada.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So it's funny you say that. My college roommate was a baseball player, but he became a hoops player. He used to coach at Nevada.
Oh, right on. Right on.
Yeah. Up there in Reno.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had twins.
Yeah, last year they had twins. Yep.
Yeah, they were pretty tight.
Yeah, they had a lot of talent on that team. So the Twins are playing for the Hornets now. And then Jordan Caroline, whose dad is Simeon Rice, he plays for the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
But they went down to Grand Canyon last year, and I was wondering, I'm like, God, Grand Canyon, when did they become? But the student section at Grand Canyon was the best. Unreal.
It's crazy.
They've got a hell of an environment. They almost knocked us off last year. So
yeah, big. The school, man. They've done some amazing things with no question, hands down.
Yeah, it's amazing what these schools do over years and with a little bit of funding that they get.
Yeah, exactly.
a lot of bit of funding that they get.
Exactly.
Well, awesome, Darrell. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me today. How can our audience find you on LinkedIn or your podcast and all that? Any details you can share for us?
Yeah, Darrell James. You can always find me on LinkedIn. Darrell James. There's only a handful of us out there. Influential Recruiter is, you can find it on Apple, Stitcher, Libsyn, and Google, or you can just Google the Influential Recruiter, and it'll pop up. And, for those who are out there, hey, most definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well. You have the Influential Recruiter. I have my kind of personal. One of the things I'm doing on this, if you don't mind me just making this Instagram plug, one of the things I'm doing is I have my own personal Instagram account. I am Darrell James, but what I'm starting to do is for the different, I'm a big Instagram fan, but what I'm doing is I have the Influential Recruiter on Instagram. I have one of my other hobbies, as you already mentioned, is golf. I have why play golf. So I have all these other channels on Instagram. And just as a point that, if you're looking to build your social media presence as it relates to your business, you can have up to 5 different Instagram accounts, and they can be specific to your business. And then as far as Facebook is concerned, create a business page on Facebook, and that becomes separate from your personal. You have your business page that you can have on Facebook.
Yep.
You probably know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to get it done with social media. So again, Darrell, I thank you for hanging out, man. That was a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed yourself too. I know that you being a podcast host, you could probably tear me down and spit me out, man, but I really appreciate it. No,
man, you're doing good, Don. Hey, Donnie, man, the key is that you're out here and you're in the game. Hey, you're jabbing it, Donnie.
I appreciate it, man. Well, we'll talk to you guys soon, everyone. Reach out to Darrell on LinkedIn and see how. Thank you, man. We'll talk to you. Have a good one.
Take care.